This is CBC Vancouver News.
And this has now got me off the street and got me support that I need.
As a steep rise in homelessness continues in Chilliwack, dozens more shelter beds and housing are on their way. Also, a deadly crash. Police say a young man has been killed in Surrey after being hit by a car. Plus, inspiring, punchy, and short talks. Vancouver marks a decade of TED Talks. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Zahra Premji. We begin in Chilliwack, where more than 70 new shelter beds and modular housing units are coming to the community. The city that has seen a rapid and concerning growth in homelessness over the past 10 years. As Liam Britton reports, it's being welcomed by the mayor and local groups who help unhoused people.
Kathy, you want to come on up here?
Kathy McHale says she's grateful that she has a roof over her head.
This has now got me off the street and got me support that I need and the help that I need.
She spent 9 months at a Ruth and Naomi Mission shelter in Chilliwack, and then the past year in supportive housing. Ruth and Naomi's operations in Chilliwack are set to get a boost.
We are rapidly responding to the urgent housing needs of the most vulnerable in the community.
With the province bringing in more shelter and supportive housing to Chilliwack, a focus is people living in encampments.
It's not safe for anyone, not for the neighbors, not for the surrounding community, and most of all, not for the people experiencing homelessness themselves.
At the site of a former motel, a new modular supportive housing building is planned with 43 units. Ruth and Naomi Mission will run that site. And on Trethewey Avenue, 30 new shelter beds at a wellness center are in the works, run by Lookout Society. Now, a look at some of the recent numbers around homelessness in Chilliwack paint a bit of a troubling picture and could illustrate why this type of housing is so needed. In 2014, there were just 73 people in the community identified as homeless. Last spring, it had jumped to 413. 40% identified as Indigenous, although Indigenous people only make up 8% of the general population. People counted many reasons for being without shelter, including high housing costs, health and addiction problems, or interpersonal and family issues, and sometimes all of those issues at once. The shelter spaces are expected to be ready in a few weeks, with modular housing set to start rising in the summer, opening by the fall. Liam Britton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Police say a man was arrested and released after officers found the body of a woman in the Lumbee area just east of Vernon. The man is believed to be involved in the death. He has been released under a number of mandatory conditions. Police say the officers were looking into an alleged abduction at the time of they discovered the victim and believe the woman was a victim of foul play. Now, police say a pedestrian who was struck by a car in Surrey on Friday has now died. The RCMP says a Mercedes struck the 23-year-old victim at 61A Avenue and 144th Street. He was taken to hospital but did not survive. Police say the Mercedes also crashed into another vehicle that was stopped at a red light, causing it to roll over. The driver was also taken to hospital and released. Mounties say she is cooperating. 14,000 lives. That's the number of people killed by toxic drugs in BC since the province declared a public health emergency 8 years ago. Over the weekend, a Richmond family whose loved one was killed by poisonous drugs organized a car rally aimed at destigmatizing drug use and addiction. As Michelle Gomez reports, the family is pushing for better access to safe supply.
About a dozen cars paraded the streets of Richmond, decorated in purple. It's the color representing overdose prevention.
Drug users don't always look like the vision people have of them. My son was a businessman. He had a job. He struggled with mental illness and addiction.
Debbie Tablotny says her son Curtis died of a toxic drug overdose in 2022.
My brother died playing PlayStation in his bedroom. He went to work that day, he went home, he did drugs, and he died.
Curtis's family organized the car rally to bring awareness to the stigma that drug users face and to advocate for more government support, including mental health resources and safe supply.
We didn't know where most of the services were. I would sit on the internet and research, and I could not find ways to help him. And when I did, he was turned down.
In February, Richmond City Council resolved to ask health authorities to look into the possibility of a supervised drug consumption site at the city's hospital. But after hundreds protested the proposal at City Hall, the city announced it would not move forward.
It's a tragedy in our community. It's not just the people who are passing away, it's the family and friends and co-workers, their neighbors.
In the last 8 years, more than 14,000 British Columbians have lost their lives to illicit toxic drugs. And the deaths escalated in 2023, with an average of almost 7 deaths per day, up from 6.2 per day in 2022. It's the leading cause of death for people between the ages of 10 and 59.
The reason we're here is because people are hiding in their bedrooms, and you don't know how many people are actually using and who's going to die tomorrow. You know, it's 7 people in BC. It's 7.
The Toblotny family rode in Curtis's old car today, which they have since refurbished.
My son always says, my oldest son, he loves driving it because that's his voice. The car motor is his voice, and he revs the engine and said, this is my brother's voice.
Be nice to each other.
Michelle Gomez, CBC News, Richmond.
Pro-Palestinian protesters blocked access to the Delta Port terminal in Metro Vancouver earlier today. Protesters say the demonstration was aimed at disrupting Israeli shipping services. It says more than 100 people took part. Terminal operator GCT Canada says the protesters' actions caused an unsafe situation as truckers tried to get to the container terminal for several hours. Now to the island where rescuers are still waiting to try to help an orca calf off northern Vancouver Island. Now the Department of Fisheries and Oceans says that Friday's attempt to guide the whale into open ocean did not work. They are now considering using different nets and boats or a sling to lift and carry the calf out of the area. It has been stuck in a tidal lagoon for more than 3 weeks after its mother died there. And the Royal Canadian Navy is welcoming a new state-of-the-art Arctic patrol vessel in Esquimalt.
It's been a tremendous amount of work to get us to this point, and it's been a phenomenal experience for our combined East and West Coast crew.
This is the first new ship to join the Pacific Fleet on the West Coast in 25 years. 2 similar vessels have already joined the East Coast Fleet, and more are coming in the next few years. This ship left Halifax, where it was built, on March 11th and traveled through the Panama Canal and up to BC, where family and friends greeted her.
It's a wonderful day. You can see all the families are out. It's very exciting to welcome them here before they start their missions to the Arctic.
So excited to see them. It's been a while since he's been back. So
it's great to be home. It's a good welcome home. It's a beautiful day in Victoria. See my beautiful family waiting for me has been great.
We're happy to have you home.
Feels great. Been gone for too long, and I'm happy to be home.
We're really happy.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
During the weeks at sea, crews practice emergency drills and small arms training. The ship has been named the HMCS Max Bernays after a Second World War coxswain. He helped take down an attacking Nazi U-boat while manning the bridge of his own Royal Canadian Navy ship. Well, BC is celebrating a leafy milestone. The government says 10 billion trees have been planted in the province since reforestation programs began in 1930. The Ministry of Forests says 2 billion of those trees were planted in the past 7 years. The government says it will plant another 50 million trees this year, focusing on areas that have been impacted by wildfires or mountain pine beetle infestations. Well, a world-renowned conference defined by its short, unscripted, often inspiring talks on technology, entertainment, and design is marking 10 years in Vancouver. Leaders say TED Talks have been a major boost for the city's economy and its global influence. Chad Pawson has more on the impact of TED.
TED is back on in Vancouver this week, taking over the convention center with its custom-built wooden theater and transforming the entire space into a well-appointed living room. Now, the conference is not the biggest that the city of Vancouver hosts. It's 2,000 attendees, but the scope and influence of the people who come to be inspired and to listen, to spend money on hotels, restaurants, and activities is unique.
TED
in bringing the kinds of people that it attracts from around the world that land in Vancouver. So not only is that a great calling card or advertisement or promotion for a city, but the other thing that we like about TED or conferences like that is it's not just about tourism, it's about connecting those decision makers, hopefully with people that are in our city who are trying to make this a better place.
Tourism advocates say it is unusual for a single city to host a conference like this for such a long stretch. Organizers say they love Vancouver, they love being here simply because it's so beautiful, but also because of their work with the Vancouver Convention Center that has allowed them to build a one-of-a-kind space. Organizers say many attendees, this conference is now a must-do. They come for the talks, but also Vancouver as well.
After 10 years, people are now, this is like marked on their calendar years in advance about kind of coming here and that they get to branch out. This is a global destination. So we have people from all over the world who come here and utilize this wonderful place, but also it continues to give us the flexibility that we need. What more can we do? What more can we build? What activations and experiential things can we do? And the VCC is like, bring it on. Like, what else can we help you with?
Hosting conferences is a competitive business across the globe, says the Vancouver Convention Center. But when you get to say that you've hosted TED for 10 years, potential customers pay attention. Now, the organizers say they have no plans to move the conference and are under contract for the next few years. Chad Pawson, CBC News, Vancouver.
While many of us enjoyed some warmer weather over the weekend, Avalanche Canada is warning of the transition to what's known as an isothermal snowpack and increased avalanche risk.
Whether you're planning on traveling in snow, for example, skiing, snowmobiling, hiking, or if you are just planning on going out on more of a spring hike, as you get higher up, there could still be avalanche hazards if there's snow on the ground.
In the spring, snow becomes wet and loses cohesion. The risk of avalanches is especially high in the afternoon when slopes may have been baking in the sun all day. Well, the BC Sports Hall of Fame has gone high-tech with its newest project. The 3D interactive Indigenous Sports Gallery profiles the accomplishments of over a dozen Indigenous athletes, coaches, and builders, bringing their stories to life virtually. Take a look.
Thank you for joining us as we today open the door to the world's first fully immersive digital Indigenous sport gallery.
I've had the chance to compete at everything except the Olympic Games. I've been the Olympic alternate twice. Everything I've accomplished in those 4-year quads has helped me prepare. Now this time I'm feeling really ready to achieve that goal.
Sports is very important. It goes a long way. It builds a lot of character. It does a lot for our people. It gives us opportunities we might not have had before. You know, this is the truth and reconciliation. When we come together, we have equal opportunities for sports. We acknowledge our people, your people, whoever people it is, and we acknowledge each other.
With call to action number 87 of the Truth and Reconciliation Act calling sports halls of fame to provide public education that tells the national story of Aboriginal athletes in history, the digitization of the Indigenous Sport Gallery is another step forward in furthering this action.
Within what you're going to experience is how technology has come our way in a fruitful way for us to understand ourselves and understand others.
Canada was the last G7 country without a national school food program until now. Tomorrow's federal budget will outline details, and after the break, a Vancouver teacher tells us why it's about time. Stick around, that's coming up. Thank you for sticking with us during our commercial-free live stream. In Nanaimo, an alarming number of pedestrian deaths is prompting calls from advocacy groups to make streets safer. As Claire Palmer tells us, they want road infrastructure to be focused on people rather than vehicles.
It's intersections like this that have pedestrians on their heels in Nanaimo. There have been 3 pedestrian fatalities in the Nanaimo area in recent months.
You know what, honestly, we only walk in our neighborhood.
I mean, the street we live on does not have sidewalks.
That's true, but
and
we
you
just
do a lot of kind of no dog. You can't walk in the middle of the road because cars come kind of fast. There's a lot of corners. Nobody's very good at driving slow.
Strong Towns advocates for a new approach to urban planning and development. They believe more can be done from an infrastructure perspective, especially at intersections like this one here at Uplands and Departure Bay.
Now, I don't feel that comfortable on this gravel gutter here, but if I were a couple feet over there onto an actual sidewalk, I'd feel much better. Nanaimo lacks a lot of pedestrian infrastructure. Most of Nanaimo doesn't have sidewalks, for example. However, there are lots of roads that are, especially in the north end, overbuilt, leading to drivers driving a lot faster and decreasing safety overall for pedestrians, anyone outside of a vehicle.
In places like this, we got a sidewalk, but the roads are so wide that the cars are moving so fast that it's like, okay, I need to have my head on a swivel at all times.
The city of Nanaimo knows there are problems with infrastructure as a result of the amalgamation of several communities in the 70s, and say they're always looking to build back better to address these problems.
Those were all developed and created under different standards, really more rural standards than we would expect to see in a current city. And so what that's left us with is a lot of gaps in our walking and biking infrastructure. And so it's an ongoing process to fill in these gaps.
The city has been adjusting roads to be narrower, adding speed bumps or traffic circles when it's updating other public works. One such updated road, Metro Drive, even won an award for the changes the city implemented. But for Strong Towns, more needs to be done at a higher level.
And at the provincial level, we really need to increase the amount of budget that the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure is sending towards projects that get people out of cars.
For now, the group recommends pedestrians and motorists slow down and watch out to prevent further fatalities. Claire Palmer, CBC News, Nanaimo.
Canada has announced sanctions against some people and entities allegedly involved in the ongoing conflict in Sudan. This comes as the war in the northeastern African nation some have deemed forgotten marks 1 year. France hosted a humanitarian conference today to put a spotlight on the violence and suffering in Sudan. Millions in the country have been facing famine during the year-long fighting, and there is no end in sight. More than 14,000 people have died and twice as many have been injured since last April. Sudan's army and its powerful paramilitary force continue to battle for control in the capital and other areas. The UN estimates nearly 9 people have been forced to flee their homes. The federal government is promising a national school food program. It's in its 2024 budget that's being tabled tomorrow. The program will support existing provincial and territorial programs, meaning communities will have a say in how students get access to meals and what is served. A Vancouver teacher who co-founded a meal program that serves meals prepared by students spoke to our Dan Burrett earlier today.
What are some of the biggest changes you've noticed in the time that you started this program, from kids that were food vulnerable to now being in the program?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the experience of whether it's in a garden, whether it's in a kitchen, whether it's in lunch lab, just that experience transforms how they eat, what they're willing to eat, that kind of dinner table etiquette, lunchroom etiquette. Come into the lunchroom, there's 200 kids, it's a crowded room, and we can have a conversation like we're having now, right? So it's not chaos, it's enjoyment, it's conversations, it's laughter, it's kids enjoying food together, and that's all kids, right? And some kids might come from homes where they need that even more, they need that modeled to them more, they need the access to food, but this is something that all students benefit from. I don't believe children should leave high school without having a good sense of how to prepare food for themselves, knowing where to get that from, and all the skills that are needed that they're gonna need for the rest of their life.
And on to other news, coral reefs help sustain life in oceans. Now, scientists say this crucial ecosystem is under further threat as reefs around the world experience a fourth mass bleaching. And as Anand Ram reports, it's because of warming oceans brought about by climate change.
The iconic Great Barrier Reef, lively, but among the colors all this ghostly white, signs it's struggling once again.
Right now, we're currently experiencing a global scale marine heat wave that is unprecedented.
Scientists say hot ocean temperatures have affected corals in every ocean, calling it the fourth global bleaching event on record, and they're seeing more and more reefs affected every week.
So if that trend continues, this event will be the most spatially expansive global bleaching event on record in as little as a few weeks, potentially.
Corals, both organism and habitat to a quarter of all marine life, are very sensitive to heat.
Marine heat waves can last for years. They're sitting in these elevated temperatures for very long periods of time, becoming physiologically stressed.
That stress can drive away fish, and if temperatures stay hot, eventually kill the corals, which would disrupt the tourism and recreation for nearby communities, but also a vital food supply.
We know that fish provide valuable protein and micronutrients. It's unlikely that you'll find a substitute that'll be equally as nutritious and affordable for local communities.
Still, there is hope corals can recover if temperatures stabilize, but that could take more than a decade. And scientists are seeing climate change increase the intensity and frequency of bleaching level heat.
When bleaching occurs more frequently, there is just no energy, no time for corals to recover.
And as oceans absorb the excess carbon from humanity's greenhouse gas emissions, scientists warn these beautiful marine forests are being pushed closer to extinction. Anand Ram, CBC News, Toronto.
Ooh, here is a beauty live shot of a quiet Monday night in downtown Vancouver on Georgia Street. Darius Madavi will have your full forecast coming up next.
Initiated the GoFundMe.
Teodoro Alcutas, a Filipino-Canadian journalist, is at Mountain View Cemetery in Vancouver to witness the unveiling of a tombstone for the first Filipino settler in Canada, Benson Flores.
We discovered and we're honoring one of our own.
To document Flores' life, Alcutas has been partnering with another Filipino-Canadian journalist, Joseph Lopez, who discovered Benson Flores after a trip to Bowen Island in 2011.
He was reading the book by Irene Howard called Bowen Island. There was a page with Benson Flores' picture and a few lines, describing that he was Filipino.
After years of research, Lopez finally found a record of Flores in Canada's 1911 census. It's reported that he arrived in 1861.
Because he had some properties in Bowen Island. He had a float house. He was operating the first boat rental there.
Alcutas says records show Flores remained a bachelor all his life and died on April 11, 1929 at the age of 81. He was laid to rest at Mountain View Cemetery in Vancouver.
But somehow his assets were not enough to pay his liabilities. So consequently, he was buried as, he was declared an insolvent.
Until recently, the official Canadian records listed Filipino migration as starting in the 1930s. But the discovery of Flores changed the narrative.
Even though we have oral traditions and histories of Filipinos coming to the coast of British Columbia in the 17th and 18th century, he's the first one officially recorded in the Government of Canada.
I think this makes it exciting for the next generation. We can connect by seeing where they lived, where they worked, and where they're buried today.
At that time, there were only about 7, less than 10 Filipinos on Bowen Island. But now we're 175,000 or more in British Columbia alone. So we're one of the fastest growing immigrant community in this country, and Benson Flores paved the way.
El Cortez is working on a documentary to memorialize Benson Flores. He hopes to have the film ready for release by the May of this year. Zahra Premji, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, Tesla is reportedly planning to lay off 10% of its workforce as it grapples with falling sales. Now, cuts could affect about 14,000 workers employed by the electric vehicle company. The details appear to be from an internal memo sent by CEO Elon Musk. Tesla sales dropped sharply last quarter amid growing competition around the world. Even price cuts have failed to attract more buyers, with sales down nearly 9% in the first quarter this year compared to 2023.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
All right, so to check out what's happening in the world of weather, we have Darius Madavi here. Darius, give me some rain, give me some snow, please, something.
I'm sorry, Zahra. I know it's your favorite. I know you want the rain. We've gotten all the rain we're going to get, which was pretty much nothing. We had some cloud move in today, not really much precipitation to speak of. Radar didn't really pick up much of anything at all. Maybe just some very isolated showers at those higher elevations in some parts of the south coast, Vancouver Island. But generally, it's been dry, going to keep being dry. For some parts of the southern interior, you can see a little bit more precipitation on the way over the next couple days. The northeast did get a pretty decent dump today, parts of the northeast, with at least 5 centimeters accumulating in some spots. By tomorrow, this time tomorrow, we'll probably have seen 10, even 15 centimeters in some isolated high elevation locations. But yeah, just those scattered showers and flurries, pretty short-lived tomorrow. That'll be our last burst of precipitation for a while, pretty much across the province. We're getting sunny, we're getting dry. Temperatures have dropped today, or will drop tomorrow for parts of the interior. And then we're going to see those keep coming up through the end of the week as we get really nothing but sunshine ahead. You can see today temperatures already dropped for the coast and then about to drop for the southern interior tomorrow. You can see that pretty big drop. Then temperatures will slowly start to recover for the coast over the next couple days. By Wednesday, we're pretty much back. We were back to seasonal. Parts of the interior, not interior, parts of the coast as well, experiencing temperatures just above or just over seasonal. But really in the interior, taking a little bit longer to recover. But by Friday, they should shoot back up closer to the mid to high teens as well. So overall, going to be a sunny and slowly recovering to warm week ahead. Conditions tomorrow fairly calm. In those parts of the interior, you do see a little bit more activity. Most of this confined to the early morning hours. Very few places continuing over into Wednesday, but we do have a risk of some thunderstorms both this or we had risk of thunderstorms this evening. We will have some more thunderstorms tomorrow, late afternoon, early evening, but really just in some parts of the interior. Here in Vancouver, lots of sun, especially for inland, very warm.
All right, so you're not giving me the rain, but thank you for the sun, Darius.
Sorry, Zahra. I did what I can do.
That's Darius Madavi. Thank you so much. All right, we'll take the sun, right? And that's all for your late news this Monday. Thank you so much for being with us. Now, Before you let that head hit the pillow, take one last scroll and online on what's making headlines, and that's over at cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That starts tomorrow morning at 5:30. Thanks for being here, and hey, have a fantastic night.